So implementing things like having a healthy diet and lifestyle, exercise is always really good because you're going to have those hormone fluctuations. A really healthy way to blow off the steam, to get rid of the stress, to manage those hormonal fluctuations because they're going to come, and a lot of times they come with the storm.
Erica, thank you so much for hopping on. I'm super excited to be able to connect and have you here and to just bring your wealth of knowledge and expertise to my community, because I know it's going to be amazing. We're going to talk all about PMS, how that works, like how to eliminate some of those PMS symptoms, like managing life, all of that. So this is going to be an amazing episode. I'm super excited to dive in with you.
Thanks, Renee. I'm super excited to be here and to talk more about this. This is my zone of genius.
Yes. I know I've been a part of your Facebook group for a little while. And so I see your stuff all the time. And it's just amazing to actually, I was talking to somebody else about this today. When you are in the online world, it's easy just to see a name. And then when you actually like connect and talk, and I mean, that's what it's really all about. But just to have that face-to-face conversation sometimes is so different. It's like warms my heart. So I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. I think we're definitely missing a lot of that face-to-face in our technology circles, as it were. So yeah, I'm glad to be of service and to be there. So
Yes.
I'm glad you were able to join and looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So before we kick off, like, do you want to share a little bit about your journey? Like, what is it? I've had my own journey into how I really started to embrace and love my cycle. And I know for you to be able to talk so much about PMS and things like that, there has to have been a similar journey of your own. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like the beginning of my PMS journey was a little melodramatic. I, like any young heartthrob, wanted to start birth control for less than religious reasons. So what I had some PMS throughout the years, and I had, some symptoms that were, I would say, fairly like medium to mild symptoms. They were fairly easily controlled. And it was only when I started on birth control that my PMS went haywire. I can't even describe to you the lack of control I felt in my life. It was like, who is this person? Kick her out of my house. I don't want, she is not my best friend. No, the emotional fluctuations, the crying to arguing to I couldn't even tell you, I didn't have control of my thoughts anymore.
Yeah.
And it ranged from a pretty severe, almost from anxiety to depression. And I hate to throw in those buzzwords, but because I never had anything diagnosed, but that was the really severe, highs and lows of it that I was all over. And I remember a couple of trips specifically, I was kind of in the midst of, oh, this birth control didn't work. It made me feel like garbage. Let me try another one. And it did the same thing. And amidst that, my PMS was going crazy. I had all of the symptoms between bloating and weight gain and acne breakouts and everything. And I was ruining vacations. I remember a gorgeous family vacation, and I was just a monster on it. I can't even believe my parents still claimed me after that family vacation because I didn't even recognize myself. And I ruined friendships, best friend friendships. I had a relationship at the time that definitely struggled and ended, I would say, solely because of the way, I did not have control over my life. I was just rolling on the roller coaster of, emotion and PMS and everything in between. And it was really that, those huge pivotal moments, will my family even love me after I'm done with this? That spurred me to make the changes that I've made and to just do the research of why is this happening to me? Because when I brought it up to my doctor, they're like, oh, just try a different birth control. Just try it. Maybe that one wasn't for you. Just try a different one. And eventually I was like, it's what I'm putting in my body. My body is so imbalanced. And nowadays I would say hormonal balance is the ultimate balance. If you don't have that, it shows in so many areas of our life. So we don't even know it. So yeah. So long story short, that's where I started from. I mean, PMS literally ruining my lives because of all the hormone imbalances that I had going on. And I needed to make a change. I don't know where I would be today if I didn't make a change.
Yeah. And I mean, I know, so PMS definitely has its own like spectrum of what people experience, right? So I know like for me, it's definitely ebbed and flowed over the years. And I know I got off birth control for a whole other host of reasons, right? Like I developed some weird symptoms and my body, the same thing. Like I got off of it and never went back. And I've like now since had those same symptoms and they've categorized it as a potential autoimmune, but they say that it was because of the birth control. Is like not, the doctors won't say that because there's not that much research on it. But when you look online, majority of people will label as like getting on birth control being that big trigger. But years later, I was like, I'm going to test it out again and I'm going to get on birth control. And I turned into a raging lunatic, like on the mini pill, like after I had a baby. And my husband's like, we cannot do this. Like we cannot be on this. And so I know birth control definitely adds a layer of those experiences for people, but even just normal, like without birth control, people have a range of fluctuations. So would you mind even just sharing for people what is considered normal? Like, and so that they can have an identification of, okay, this is abnormal. I need to do some work around this. And this is kind of just normal. My body's hormones are changing each month.
Yeah, definitely. And so, when I talk to people, I say, it's really important to stop PMS. And I say stop in a very, I would say broad term, because there is really no way we should not be stopping our hormones, because that's what a lot of the birth control does, because that's the intention of it, right? But that normal ebb and flow of hormones is actually really necessary for, everything that is the menstrual cycle, right? That's why, that's how it happens. And what we need to make sure that we're being aware of is that we need to know when our hormones are going to go up and down to anticipate those changes so that you can really adjust your lifestyle accordingly. So what is normal? Categorized by, people like Mayo Clinic and stuff like that, apparently like 70% of women have PMS. And I would say that number is like way underrated, right? I would say 99.9% of women have some sort of PMS. And a lot of women are typically, I think the normal range is from like 3 to 5 symptoms or something. And that could be anything from indigestion, nausea, acne, cramping and pain, mood swings, emotional fluctuations, things like that, having constipation, diarrhea, all those like things that we don't really like to talk about, but actually that's part of the PMS symptoms, because a lot of what happens in our gut, especially, is controlled by hormones. And sleep disturbances, insomnia, like that can actually be linked to PMS as well. So there's a large range of symptoms. And some women, what a normal PMS might look like is, a little bit of cramping, like, I might feel like I'm a little bit more tired one day, my energy isn't like, go get them. And maybe I didn't sleep as good the night before. And, some people's symptoms might be, I'm craving everything with salt in it, or, I just want a chocolate bar, or I just can't have a really intense conversation with my loved one right now. Like my mental capacity is not there.
Yeah.
Or decision making. That's a really big one, especially during like the luteal phase when our estrogen drops, our serotonin drops. So we actually have less pleasure and motivation. And so when somebody asks you, what do you want to do? You're like, nothing really sounds good right now. Like, I know I want to do something, but I don't know. And so like those are kind of normal PMS symptoms. Like I'm just kind of feeling, but on the extreme end, what's not really normal is not being able to get out of bed, right? Calling in from work. Like I have talked to so many people like throughout the years, and they're like, I literally don't get out of bed for a week.
Yeah.
That's not normal, right? Just having an extreme, I would say like train crash of all of these symptoms on high indigestion, like I was saying before, turning into like, I can't leave my house because I don't know if I'm going to have a bathroom. Something's not going in or coming out or whatever else. That anxiety, depression I was talking about before, like I don't know if I can handle the outside world, or I don't even want to get up and out of bed in the morning, but I get my kids to school and then like I go back to bed for the rest of the day. And I just hide it from everybody. Like that's not normal PMS.
Yeah. No, I love that you kind of brought that up, because like I look at symptoms throughout the whole month, right? Like when I look at the cycle and look at the 4 different phases that I break it down to and how we actually use it and leverage it for work and optimizing our time and things like that, like you have to be aware of all of those little indicators. So for me, years ago, I remember that like the one symptom I got every time I was pregnant, and I could tell like right away I was pregnant, was my boobs would get super tender. Like I'd get this like really massive, like, oh my gosh, like I'm pregnant. Like I just knew right away. And then it wasn't until probably like 3 or 4 years post my last baby that I felt that feeling again. And I was like, holy, I'm pregnant again. But it wasn't. And now I get it every single month. So it's like, that's one of those cues to me of like what my body's doing, but it's not to the point where it's incapacitating, right? Like I notice it. I notice like GI changes. I notice like the way my body feels, but I really use them as indicators. And I think what you kind of highlighted was that there are those elements that are just, no longer are they indicators. They're truly disrupting your life. Right. And so in order for you to get to the place where I can help you really leverage and work with your cycle and really maximize it and optimize it, we kind of have to get to that place where we don't have these symptoms that are debilitating that time of the month, but that they transition to more of this place of being indicators and things that you can use as like, okay, this is where my body's at. Tell a little bit more about like, what do you do and how do you help women do that? Like get to this place that, you said like stop PMS, but like, how do we get from this place of like the totally debilitating, raging lunatic woman into like, okay, now we can just listen to these as indicators of our body?
Yeah, a couple of things. Like the first and foremost is really getting to know those symptoms, because a lot of times our initial, cultural reaction is, oh, I just need to take a Tylenol and it'll go away, right? Or maybe I just need an extra coffee and, I'll feel better, right? I'll feel a little bit more perky. And instead of covering up those symptoms with alternatives that might just band-aid them and make them go away, really tuning into listening to them. Maybe taking down like a journal, like starting a food diary, what have I been eating this month? Or, what have my activities been like? What is my emotional temperature really? Am I hot? Am I cold? Am I somewhere in between? Do I feel stressed out, 90% of the time? Or do I feel like even if, I'm not feeling my best, or even if I'm feeling a little bit less energetic, like I could handle a conversation, where are you on those ranges? And so really the first thing is to kind of take a gauge of where you're at, because a lot of us think like, oh, it's not so bad, right? And then we start to really think like, oh, like I really didn't get out of bed for 2 days or whatever. And, starting there is always the best thing. And the second thing that I would always say is food is fuel. And a lot of times what's going on in our body is a cry for more nutrition or more balance and regulation. And I'm a huge proponent of detoxing, and detoxing could just be eating fruits and vegetables. There's so many fad diets and detoxes and stuff like that out there. And I'm not an advocate for restricting or fasting, in bits and pieces, right? There's pros and cons, but what we as women need a lot of times and what we're lacking is that nutrition that actually fuels our blood supply, that carries that oxygen, that gives ourselves the nutrients that we need to avoid those cravings. So a lot of times that's where I start. We need to clear out the passageways that our liver, for example, is like the prime estrogen remover, detoxifier of the body. If our liver is clouded, if we're drinking every night, or, if we're so stressed out and our liver is bogged down, everything else is going to start stopping, right? It's like you're doing a road construction. You need to clear out those pathways so everything else can flow. So that's really where I start, trying to detoxify, increasing your really nutritious foods, and then lifestyle, honestly, just your healthy habits. Stress, I can't say it enough. It's the number one culprit of all. It comes and it goes. It's in everybody's life and it's necessary, but it's how we manage it. It's how we choose to manage it and what we do.
Yeah, no. And it's so true. Cause like, I know we had somebody on the podcast a while back that was talking about how do you even know when your body's stressed, right? Because there's so many different stressors that some of us are just better about hiding those symptoms and hiding those things that like, I don't often oftentimes I just don't label myself as being a stressed out person, right? It's never been something. There are moments that I get stressed, but then when you sometimes take a look at like how my body's actually functioning, and sometimes I'm like, no, my body is actually stressed out. Like my mind might not be stressed out, but my body is stressed out. And I think food is a huge one of those, right? Like I know for me, like sugar is a huge problem on my body. Like sugar just does not do well for my body. And yet I love sugar. Like it's one of those things, right? So looking at like, what are those stressors that I'm doing on my body? And I know I was recently just talking with a group of my clients and they were asking about like energy, right? And I talk a lot about how there are times of the month that your energy is naturally lower, right? Like there's times, and I do this every time I talk about it, like this, like I get this vision of this like ball globe thing and it's like rotating anyway, but like where you have energy that is impacting the way you show up in your life. And then you have habits that are impacting your energy. And it's like this symbiotic relationship. I think that's why I do this. Like this is like rotating ball, because the things that you're doing are actually impacting the way your body's actually, the energy level and how your body is actually feeling, the stress load that it has. And then the way you're handling it's like back and forth, like your body's actually impacting your energy. And so it's like the chicken or the egg conversation of like, we can't address one without the other. We have to look at the habits and we have to look at how your body's impacting and create this rhythm kind of back and forth with each other.
Yeah, I love the way that you described it as that symbiotic relationship, because that is in and of itself, when our gut is asking for sugar, we have the microbiome of our gut is billions of bacteria, right? And when we feed it, right, when we eat, we're feeding the bacteria in our gut, right? It is a symbiotic relationship. When we feed it things that maybe will make it overgrow and disrupt the natural balance, that's usually where we have those energy slumps, where we usually start to have those mood swings, those indigestion. And it starts with how we're eating, what we're eating and stuff. And sometimes cravings are a great thing because they tell us what the body is lacking. A lot of times when we're craving sugar, it's because we need that vitamin B. We need those complex B vitamins because they help a lot with creating new blood cells and getting that oxygen going. And that's what the body needs at that time of the month. We're sending all this like healthy, rich blood and oxygen and everything else to our baby making stations because that's what it needs, right?
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't need that, right, it's in a huge process of contraction and cramping and everything like that. But it needs to do that in order to regenerate and renew. And so if we're missing that, that's where the pain starts to come in. So you see where we're missing one thing and then we have something else happen, and like that symbiotic relationship, we need to have so many awesome, supportive tools in place in order to avoid, like you said, the chicken or the egg, like what's coming first? Like, is it the pain or is it the cravings or is it so many different things?
Yeah. So, okay. I know you've talked about food a lot and that being like a huge thing. And I really do think that, like food is everything for your body, right? Like I talk a lot about movement and food and water and all these things, like they all go together. Like your body is your vessel and your vehicle for whatever you want to do. And so what is kind of tackling the food, kind of that first step? Like I know there's probably a lot of women listening right now that are experiencing some pretty extreme PMS symptoms, maybe completely debilitating, maybe just a day, maybe it's like it's all you're thinking about throughout the day. And so if we want to help normalize that and get rid of some of that extremeness, where would be that first place you kind of take them and get them started?
Yeah, when we're talking about food, like there are a couple of key nutrients that honestly, if you were to judge today's soil versus 10, 20 years ago soil, the soil is actually a lot more depleted in nutrients than it used to be. So even if we're eating only fruits and vegetables, we really need a range of basically all the time of having that nutrition in order to actually get our recommended daily intake of vitamins and minerals that are key in helping the whole menstrual cycle process, right? So the first thing that I would really recommend, leafy greens, if it's green, you guys, like eat it. I would never go wrong with that. Vitamin B, magnesium, calcium, like there's so many good vitamins and minerals in anything green. I'm talking, Brussels sprouts and Swiss chard and kale and spinach and, even green apples. Just start with like the colors of the rainbow, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, right? If it's a color of the rainbow and if it looks good, like throw it in a salad, put it in a blender, like start adding like the rainbow into your diet. A lot of times we eat for calories, right? Like, oh, it's 100-calorie, granola bar, like post gym or whatever. But does it carry the nutrition of 100 calories or is it just 100 calories, right? It's like the difference between putting, those like, I want to say the logs that burn by themselves or whatever, you like light them
the
in.
Dura logs or whatever they are.
Yeah. Okay. So like campfire example. So you light the log and it burns for 3 hours, right? It's a 3-hour log. Or you could have a ton of logs that's going to give you a really massive fire and it's going to be really hot and like roast those marshmallows or whatever else. And it's going to be a 3-hour fire, right? Which fire would you prefer? Like what kind of energy are you looking for? Do you want like just to get by or are you actually looking to like create some movement and stuff like that? So what we're looking for in our food is something like big, something fibrous, something that's going to move our digestive system and create that energy in our gut. And that's really when like those fruits and vegetables come in because without them, a lot of times fiber is missing. Our guts don't move as fast as they need to. And we have a lot of those toxins that are just sitting in there weighing it down. So if I were to say one thing to start with, definitely anything green goes.
Yeah. And okay. So I think that that's super valuable. And I know I even recently just did like a fruits and vegetables only like cleanse and it was amazing to watch how much more energy I had during that week. Like the first few days I was like, oh gosh, I'm not having my coffee and I could feel the coffee headache. But then after that went away, it was like, I have so much more energy and I'm not drinking coffee at all. And it just was this amazing to watch just solely fruits and vegetables and allowing that body to kind of detox and cleanse out. So I know this is going to like shift gears a little bit, but I would love to talk a little bit about the people that are on birth control, that are not on birth control for the sense of preventing pregnancy, right? They're on birth control for management of symptoms, or maybe they are on it for pregnancy, but they want to try something different. I know I've talked to a lot of women who are scared to come off the birth control because of the little bit of the roller coaster and adjustment in their bodies as they make that transition. So from what I'm hearing from you a lot is that birth control is just wreaking so much havoc on bodies and it's not serving a lot of women very well at all. And so if women are wanting to migrate off of that, what would you recommend in terms of like helping with that transition, helping to make the transition, or what would you recommend they do to help like get off of birth control and help to kind of eliminate some of these PMS symptoms?
Yeah, definitely. So especially depending on the person and how long you've been on a certain type of birth control, it really depends on how your body will react coming off. Because I know people, from personal experience that, I wasn't on hormonal birth control for very long. So I had a little bit of ups and downs, especially as I was getting on and off them. And it was a short period of time. And I was really lucky that afterwards, I was able to start doing a lot of research and implementing these things. I've talked to people who had, started birth control when they were 13, 14 years old for the reason of their PMS symptom. And they were on it for like over a decade before they were like, why am I still taking this thing? I want to do something more natural. And the doctors said, oh yeah, you can just go off of it. And then the roller coaster hit them and they're like, I didn't know, like this, basically they were diagnosed bipolar and like what's going on in my life. And it's crazy. So what I would recommend, especially if you're thinking about coming off, is to have a plan. So implementing things like having a healthy diet and lifestyle. Exercise is always really good because you're going to have those hormone fluctuations. A really healthy way to blow off the steam, to get rid of the stress, to manage those hormonal fluctuations because they're going to come, and a lot of times they come with a storm, right? Having support systems in place. So having a lot of good communication with your partner, friends, or family, whoever is there to support you, like, hey, like this is what's going on. So, just to have an accountability partner, right? Somebody to say, hey, hon, maybe you need to go for a walk, or like, hey, let's like have a healthy smoothie instead of going to buy ice cream. time, right? Just somebody who can motivate us and be our cheerleaders, right? We all love a fangirl. Everybody needs a fangirl in their life. And I would recommend having a really healthy diet and lifestyle, right? So sleeping good, good means 7 to 9 hours a night, right? Especially for an adult. Like that should be the normal. I know some people think that they can get away with less, but we can't actually make up our sleep. Deprivation is there permanently. And we all love our beautiful, youthful looking skin and everything, and sleeping keeps us young. So if that's your only motivation to sleep, you guys, you got it. So sleeping, definitely decreasing caffeine intake, alcohol intake, things like that, any toxins of smoking and things like that, because they can actually play an impact in how our hormones adjust and how our hormones are balanced. And then detoxing, super, super huge. When we're first coming off of a birth control, you're not going to feel great, but helping really smooth and like get that process over with would be really beneficial. However, it's not easy. I will say that, it's not going to be easy. It'll be a little bit, a couple of days where you feel like, I call it the detox flu. You're going to be like waking up, not feeling great, take a few days off work, like personal days, vacation days, whatever, go through, have a spa day, like get a pedicure, like something really supportive that's going to help your stress level balance out. And then, definitely incorporating those fruits and vegetables, really healthy foods, tons and tons and tons of water. I can't stress enough. When we hydrate our body, everything processes so much better. As far as detoxifying, sitting in a sauna, that's really good, sweating it out, anything that you can help with just flushing and moving everything through your body. So I would definitely recommend those things. I know that's quite a list, but if you could do, only a couple, I would say definitely sleeping and definitely increasing your water. If you can only do those things and like going for a short walk to decrease your stress every day, that's a good start, right? And everything else is just a great addition to increased help along the way. It's a rough journey. It's a lot of changes in our body, especially in a short amount of time, but worth the roller coaster at the end.
Yeah, that was a lot of different ideas. And I think even like taking what you can do and taking what you want to implement right now. And I just wanted to highlight too, like how important sleep is. Like, you talked about like that would be one of your first choices. And I think as business women, sleep is usually number one to go, right? Or even just as moms, like we're up early, going to bed late, trying to get kids to bed, trying to get life together. Like that time at night seems to be sometimes where we squeeze together those sleep hours to get the most amount of done. And I have come to realize like my body needing the sleep is way more valuable than actually getting those last few things done, and how that even alone helps balance out all of those hormones as the month goes on. So if you are right now thinking of like walking away from this episode with something to do, I think Erica gave the leafy greens and the sleep, but I'm going to also reinforce both of those, and water, right? Like drinking more water, like those three things combined. Like everybody asks me how, like about energy and about irregular cycles and about massive mood swings and PMS and like all these things. Like we have just given you like 3 massive free tools that will change everything for you. And I think that so many women are undervaluing and underestimating, or maybe they know them, but it's like, oh, I can just sweep it under the rug. Like, but bring those things back out from under the rug and like put them as priorities in order for your business to move, in order for your life to flow, in order for all of these 3 things, like these 3 things need to be kind of big priorities in there. Would you add anything else onto that?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing is, even if like right now it doesn't seem as important, or, even if right now it feels more important to prioritize something else over sleep, I would just encourage you guys to look at the bigger picture, because a lot of hormonal imbalances in the long run causes things like heart disease and diabetes and obesity and things that are like really, really big life changers. So, if you want to live a healthy, long life, for your family, for yourself, for your kids, whatever it is, it's really important to rebalance your hormones and live a hormone happy lifestyle now before these problems start getting into becoming bigger problems, essentially.
Yeah. 100%. Erica, this has been such a great episode. And I know it's a question that comes up a lot because as I start talking about the cycles, like my cycle has taken quite a few years of normalization. And I think a lot of it has to do with like living in alignment with it, right? Like you mentioned those lifestyle habits. And I don't do everything, right? Like I don't eat 100% according to my cycle. I don't seed cycle. I don't do all these things, but just the little things that I do and how I've shifted have helped my cycle normalize. And so I know this is going to be a really valuable episode for people to kind of dive into and take a few things to start acting and putting in those little pieces and having those big, massive changes in terms of how their cycle actually runs, because we have to kind of get that foundation in before we can really maximize it and leverage it. And like going back, it is that symbiotic relationship, right? Like using it and leveraging it helps it normalize at the same time as like this back and forth. But if people want to do more and they want to go deeper into kind of balancing these things out with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. You can look me up at Erica Workman, EricaWorkman. And my Facebook group is Unbreaking the Cycle. So if you type in Unbreaking the Cycle, you should be able to find me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. You guys make sure to go follow up with her. Let her know what your major takeaway was. And like we talked about, like having that fangirl, like finding a community of people that are doing this with you is huge. It can make such a huge difference when you have somebody else that gets it and knows what you're doing. And that is a lot of what Erica is doing as well. So go over there and find her and be able to connect with her. And she can be your fangirl if you don't have one in your day to day.
Always. It's a pleasure, Renee. Thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.